What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your Star Citizen Week in Review for February 13th, 2023. Well, we had 4 patches to the PTU this week, but we're still not even Wave 3 yet. The roadmap update for 3.19 is looking kind of exciting, and we had a ton of ship updates this week. All that and more on today's Week in Review. And as always, if this is your first week in review, this is where I take all of the official Star Citizen news each week, put it into one video, and share some of my opinions about it. I also live stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/SaltEMike, every day but Monday, so I can get this video out to you guys, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We got a lot to get through this week, so let's start out with those 4 patch notes. They still don't have like the lettering system on patches, so we're going to call it the Monday patch, where they removed ships that were previously added for ship sales that we all praised. I think we talked about this a bit last week. Xylo did make a response. People were not happy with my reaction to it either. And basically their response was, well, it's the PTU and things are always changing. You should just accept it. You don't understand game development. Well, game developer Xylo responds and basically says that we have a timeline, exactly how I explained what their timeline was, but he kind of said that they're not going to make it in because they don't fit in the quarterly patch or whatever, right? My argument here, unless I didn't make it very clear, was that, yes, that's how they do it, and it wouldn't make sense to add these given that scenario, but the difference here is 3.18 is not a quarterly patch. It's been essentially 3 quarters that it's been worked on at this point. So yeah, all I'm asking for is to make an exception in this situation, this individual situation, and that's it. For the Wednesday patch, this wasn't much. There was just a couple bug fixes, crash fixes. Basically, the bug fix to point out is that if you had broken thrusters, hello Corsair pilots, and you repair, they will actually be fixed now. For the Thursday patch, they added the Cutlass Steel to Battle Royale and Squadron Battle, which is hilarious. You guys spelled steel wrong. Bug fixes for this patch. The ROC should be working now. I think I've said that for the last 3 weeks, so we'll have to see. And the Friday patch is more quality of life fixes around ultra-wide. And, well, you were able to use the medical gun in the Thursday patch, and at Armistice zones, I should say, and now you're able to not use those anymore, but I have seen things like the orbit mining attachment, which can do damage to players, can be used there, things like that. They also had a launcher update, which is fixing NVIDIA control panel issues. Now, that was really it. The big issue here is that there was a test that happened where they were trying to go to 3.18 Wave 3 in the PTU, which would inevitably go to a live patch, and they haven't yet. So don't know what happened with the test that they did, don't know what the issues are and what's really blocking, but hopefully soon we'll be going live. And this roadmap update is all about 3.19, except they start out with a little bit of the bad stuff, which is basically telling us it's not 3.19, it's 3.18.1. And we knew they were going to do this. I've called this out for a while. They're going to name patches 3. The next patch, no matter what, because we said so many bad things about last year. And what I would want to say about this, and I think it's basically just Jared who I've heard this from so far, so this is mainly just a criticism of him, unfortunately, is, well, you're being very reactionary about the way the community feels, and the community feels that last year was not a good year. I agree with that sentiment. I think most people at the company would agree, you guys, you missed the mark last year. It was not a good year. Let's move forward. Let's not worry about this necessarily and move forward. I think this is very different from last year. They're pulling more than just a couple of tech features like 100 player servers, which we got lucky to have. They did a test, it worked. If it didn't, would you have the same arguments that you have now? Probably not, right? So for 3.19, they're actually taking gameplay features from the 3.19 branch and porting them into 3.18. We've seen this with 3.15 and 3.16 as well. So this is nothing new, and they actually did the same thing here where 316 was a branch off of 315. So this isn't a new thing. It's the features that really matter here, and that's what we're going to get through next. The other arguments and complaints about this is that there's not many cards here. So they start out with the Lorville Cityscape. We've heard a lot about that. There's really nothing to add here because we know what that is. The new player experience is basically creating a new player experience for the first 30 minutes that you play Star Citizen. It seems like it's going to be at ArcCorp. Actually surprised to hear about this because there wasn't much talk about it in the monthly reports because this team that was supposed to be doing this was basically just doing marketing stuff. So glad to see that that's ready to go. Salvage contracts, we know a lot about those. We talked about them last week. So if you haven't heard about that yet, check out last week's Week in Review. But yeah, the big thing here is that you're not seeing mining contracts, which should be exactly the same, right? Well, salvage is probably more easily set up for 319 Light 318 because it was built for that feature. Mining is a legacy feature, and it's probably going to take a lot more work to stabilize for something like this. Ghost Hollow PvP mission, basically taking SPK Jumptown type mechanics and bringing them down to that ground location as well. They talked about, well, using comm arrays and fighting over terminals. It feels very much the same. Let me know what you guys think about this, because we had this issue with the drug labs before, where they started spreading out the content too far. We still only have 100 player servers, so interacting with players is still quite difficult. So a place like SPK being one of a kind is a good thing for right now, in my opinion. But they obviously need to move the game forward for the future, which is stuff like this. But that is it for this roadmap roundup. Obviously not a lot of cards. That's the criticism here. My expectation is this is just what they are 100% sure can make it into 319 Light, and they need to get more of an idea of the things that are on the fence to get into 319 Light. And I imagine we'll get more cards being brought forward, but we'll have to see. And then the Squadron 42 monthly report is very short, very simple, because most of the update is around Squadron 42. We just focus on the features that may affect Star Citizen. Vehicle feature team, that's one that's going to be very much affecting Star Citizen, is working on weapon balancing now. That is a big deal. It is the biggest blocker to bring master modes and all of the work they've been doing over the last year to Star Citizen away from Squadron 42. That is the big blocker. So to see them start that is very exciting. Yogi also mentioned a lot of other things around this in his Spectrum posts. Those will be linked down below, but basically he said a lot of the same things where, hey, we're working on this stuff. I can't tell you when it'll be, blah, 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 right? They also talked about scanning, which is definitely a much needed quality of life improvement in Star Citizen, as well as MFDs. Then we also had a UI update, which all they did was mention the star map. Anytime they mention the star map, I'm going to tell you about it, because we all know how bad the PU one is, and we just want the one from Squadron 42 as soon as possible. But in case you didn't know, it's mostly been communicated that we'll see that towards the end of the year. That was the Squadron 42 monthly report. Again, not too much in terms of Star Citizen stuff, but hopefully more next month. For video updates, well, it's a bit of a doozy. We had Journey to 4.0 interior design. Right off, they share the types of rooms that they want to make in their lead up to 4.0.
So when talking about building interiors, how could we start to break that down? So right off the bat on the top, it's the rooftop spaces. So these would be the primary access points for the player. Then just below that, the maintenance spaces, these could be industrial or technical. Also, we can have residential. So residential could be entire building blocks, so it could be a proportion. Then after that, we've got commercial. So these could be shopping, it could be offices, it could be social. And then at the bottom, obviously, we've got lobbies. Now, these also could be access points for the player. For example, if you're inside Area 18, the player can get access to it there. And then lastly, we've got the underground. Now, these could be interesting as a connector space between buildings. So maybe you've gone in through one building, you go down, and it could bring you through to another part of a building.
Now, for me, it's important to see the scope of all this. That is a lot of different and, I guess, world building and important kind of rooms, features, buildings, things that we need for Star Citizen's growth. I argued in my react to this originally that we already have building interiors with Siege of Orison and the Orison platforms. This is a lot more world building than that, obviously. The next big discussion that they have is around, well, the fact that the cities in game are going to change a lot here in the near future.
Now, one thing to note is the cityscapes are probably going to change a little bit. Just from an initial investigation, we found our buildings are quite small. So expect to see the skylines go through a period of transition, but that's cool because that means we're designing the inside of the buildings and then we'll redo the architecture to fit to that. So I think it's going to be super positive for the game.
They never really planned for this, which is kind of surprising to build from the inside out. They just wanted them to be background cityscapes. Look pretty, sell the game. Surprise, surprise. They're going to have to get a lot bigger, and I love the idea of this, to feel like an actual citizen of a city, a resident of a city, not just a passerby or a visitor, which is how we feel now. And then lastly, they kind of address the elephant in the room around this video specifically.
So just in case we was thinking it's all just blue sky concept, actually we're going to start full production on these spaces right at the end of this quarter.
They're going into production now, and in fact, by the time this airs, we'll already have started.
Yep, the entire video is concept art, but this isn't 2012 anymore. This isn't 2016. We look at the Montreal team, and they're doing a lot with the concept arts that we saw not too long ago. We're even playing a lot of that stuff now. So the expectation here is exactly what they're doing, immediately working on things after drawing them, which is good. So seeing that coming in progress is good. I cannot wait to see this actually move on. Then for lack of progress, I mean, Star Citizen Live's taken a few steps back after this week. This was probably one of the worst ones I've ever seen, and it was basically 40 minutes of developers talking about how they've joined game development and the company, and then the other 20 minutes of Jared explaining how game development works, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. And we did get a tiny bit of info from this, so here you go.
We just finished the Santokai white box, and I think we're moving on to the X1 after that. Yeah, so hopefully that comes out this year. hopefully, I don't know. Maybe it's up in the air. We'll see.
The views and opinions of Stephen Hosmer do not represent those of Cloud Imperium Games, Marvel Space Industries, or subsidiaries.
I don't know when. You got to get a producer in here to actually figure out when things are coming out.
Weren't actually supposed to mention the X. Okay, yeah, so the X1. There we go. All right. Stephen, Matt, Ellen, Chris, thank you so much for being on the show.
Guys, I've had the X1 in my hangar for literal years. It is a spaceship motorcycle that has no purpose in the game whatsoever. Why are we hiding this? The fact that the company with open development and everything would hide something so trivial and be upset when they share these things is silly to me. This isn't a leak. This isn't sharing incomplete art. This isn't something that they haven't sold yet. This isn't hiding anything exciting. It makes no sense. But hey, I guess ship news. They mentioned the Santokai, which was not mentioned in any monthly report for a while, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, let's move on to other updates. Speaking of more ships, well, the sneak peek was the RSI Scorpius Antares, and it appears to be a single-seater version of the Scorpius, where the QED or EMP is where the turret was, QED is where the rail for the turret would be, and my issue here is the ship feels 100% like power creep. This was first mentioned by Space Cutlet on Twitter, and I agree with him 100%. This is 100% power creep. This is a terribly designed ship, and it was made 100% to be sold to the backers, and that is it. There was no other reason to make this ship. It has no role in the game, and what's worse about it is it feels like it is devaluing other ships and vehicles that we already have. I don't understand it. It's not filling a gap that we need, and it just makes no sense to me, and it's upsetting. We also have Valentine's Day, which they call Coramor, and there's pink ship paints, there's armors that are exclusive for subscribers. I think we get some of these as subscriber rewards for February. And yeah, there's contests going on as well. Those will all be linked, so just feel free to check that out. And then Community Hub updates. They still haven't fixed the major update, which they are actively working on right now, which is the login issues, but they are making changes to the community hub. So if you guys go use that, go ahead and check it out. Again, Yogi did a lot of discussion around master modes. So if you haven't seen those yet, they're linked down in the description. But basically, they're plugging away at Squadron 42. Squadron 42 is getting in the way. But the one thing that he does mention that I do want to share with you guys that's really interesting is the master mode stuff is in 3.18. And that's pretty cool. So given that, it kind of tells us that it's not that far away, but given what we talked about in the Squadron 42 monthly report, that balancing update's going to take a while. So don't get your self too hyped based off seeing that one post. The ship team in Montreal is a thing. The reason why the US team was in the UK to be on that SCL was not because they had a ton of news to share, clearly, because they wouldn't share anything, and when one person shared something, they got yelled at. It was for a summit to bring up to speed the Montreal team for their new ship team. I don't get excited about ships as much anymore, but what I do get excited about is seeing the Montreal studio grow because they're doing a great job on delivering products for Star Citizen. Let's keep going. I can't wait till they have a gameplay team. That'll be sick. I'll get excited for that. But guys, that'll do it for this week. That was Week in Review. I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed making it. And as always, leave a like, comment, subscribe for more Weeks in Review, and I will catch you guys all next week.